Hey, good people, we're back. Sammy Ashe here, the Executive Director of the Ashe Academy and your host of our Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. Happy New Year and all that good stuff. 2021 has every opportunity to be full of growth and prosperity, even in the midst of trying times. We're still dedicated to discussing identity, culture, career, and academics with our BIPOC community that's Black, Indigenous, and people of color at the center. From students, parents, guardians, educators, professionals, and all in between, we can't wait to get to these important discussions. Before we get to the premiere, I do want to remind all of you that February 20th, 2021 is our second annual Black Entrepreneur Expo and Mixer, the event that put us on the map back in 2020, this time as a virtual experience. We've got an arts panel moderated by friend of the foundation, Renee, STEM panel moderated by our board president, Crystal Jones, and yours truly will be discussing the good, the bad, and the ugly of entrepreneurship. This will be streamed via Zoom to Facebook and YouTube with many ways to promote your business, so be sure to reach out for those numerous sponsorship opportunities available. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome back, everyone. This is season 2 of the Ashe Academy's Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. I'm Sammy Ashe. Thank you guys so much for hanging with us, coming back after we took a few weeks off to regroup. Today we have an excellent panel. We will be discussing cross-generational activism. So across the many generations that we've collected here today, we're going to have multiple perspectives. So let's get into these intros. First off, we have Renee Tyler. She's calling in from Wisconsin. She has been an advocate for equity and inclusion since integrating a Southern school system at the age of 6. We won't say the year with respect, but we will say she has a Master's of Public Service, a BA in Social Welfare, and is currently a member of the Engaging Local Government Leaders of 2021, having those hard conversations about race and equity and creative innovation leadership. So thank you so much for joining us. Moving on to Michael Muhammad, calling in from Chicago. He has worked with Males to Men Mentoring, Hip Hop Detox, he's a special education classroom assistant pursuing LSW, currently holding an MSW from UIC Jane Addams program. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us. We have Theresa Davis calling in from Atlanta, Georgia. She's a literary programs coordinator, author, poet, educator, speaker, and MC. Thank you so much for joining us. Jerome Hurt, friend of the foundation. He is calling in from New York. He's a financial professional with over 30 years in investment banking. He's also a writer and founder and CEO of Buy Black for Life. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And then we have Atira. She's calling in from Brownsville, New York. Professional communicator by trade, working in the New York State Senate and PR. Day and night, she's an active advocate and hood academic. I will say I love that so much. So thank you so much for joining us. Another friend of the foundation, Kearah-Armonie, helped us kick off those early episodes of the podcast last season. And we've been working together ever since with showcasing some of her film in our gala last year. So she's calling in from Brooklyn. She is the founder and curator of 28 Shades of Black Magic, an annual Black History Month photo series celebrating young Black creatives and entrepreneurs for each day of February. And that's an IG Live interview series. And there's also an IG Live interview series, Black and Alive, which is on YouTube. So thank you so much for joining us once again. And last but not least, another friend of the foundation who also showcased some work during our gala is Bryce Savoy, calling in from Oakland, California. He's an independent rapper and entrepreneur of the Black neighborhood. His Neighborhood Diamonds album or project is available on all streaming platforms and at his website, brycesavoy.com. So I'm going to take a breath because that was a lot to intro, but we have a whole bunch of people with illustrious careers. I did not say everything that you guys are, so I appreciate every last one of you for joining us today. But you're probably wondering, even after the title, what exactly are we going to be talking about? So I would like to get everyone's perspective first on what activism means to you. It's kind of a vague term. It's like, what does it actually mean? So anybody can hop in.
I'll go first. Oh, you go on to go, Jerome.
No, I think that was Bryce.
Oh, Bryce. Okay, Bryce can go.
No,
Go
ladies
for it.
first. Ladies first. Ladies
Okay,
first.
okay, Renee, then Bryce, then Jerome.
So, activism, I think sometimes we think that it has to take place in a group of people. And oftentimes, the strongest show of strength can be done by an individual, which takes a lot of courage to speak out, to speak up, to not wait to have a crowd to be with you, to support you when you're saying that is not right. To speak to somebody who's doing oppressive things, it starts here. So to not allow somebody to oppress you, you know. Um, we hear people say now in today's job, oh, well, you should just let someone know you didn't like what they did. But as people of color, and personally, what I found is when I say, you know what you did was not acceptable, you disrespected me. I've had folk say to me, oh, I'm insulted. So we as a people have to learn how to stand up for ourselves and not waiting for the shroud or the cloak of a whole bunch of folk, because there are going to be times when your activism is going, you're going to have to check somebody or you end up eating it. So that's what I feel activism is having the courage to step forward and stop somebody from disrespecting you. And you can do it. You don't have to clock them. You don't got to cuss them out. You don't, we started out right, you know, but at the end of the day, you're going to respect me. You don't have to like me. And that's the beginning of activism, in my opinion.
Awesome. All right, Bryce, could jump on in.
Yeah, that was powerful. I think activism for me is just really just like using your God given talents to empower and uplift the world. It starts obviously at home on a smaller level, from your city, your community, or your immediate community, your family, your people, and then God willing, it kind of extends, to the rest of the world. And so I think it's just really just finding something bigger than yourself and being able to strive each and every day to shine your light for the world to see, and give others the courage and the inspiration and motivation to do the same. So I think it comes in all different ways. There's no limit. There's no, quote unquote right or wrong way to be an activist per se. But I think, but like what everybody could probably attest to, it's taking it outside of yourself, but speaking up for the voiceless and speaking up for those who may not have the courage to do this, to do that for whatever reason, or have the resources really to do that. And so that's kind of how I look at activism.
Awesome.
So
it's kind of
Jerome,
hard to go
my
Renee and Bryce, but I will say, piggybacking off of what each of you said, it's taking your God-given talents, but not only your God-given talents, your God-given passion for whatever that may be. And mine is equality for underserved communities, underserved people, women, and women come in all shades, but specifically women of color for me. I've been in activism since I was 11 years old, and I didn't even realize until now I'm thinking about it. I was an activist when I would fight the bullies who would, tease the younger guys. I'm stepping in their place and I'd smash them. Let me just say that. So I just feel that it is my place. I've been blessed with so many things that it's my duty to serve God and to serve this planet by giving back and giving opportunities for people who are just like me. I grew up in the hood, and I'm the example of just because you're from the hood doesn't mean you are the hood.
I think
I
Theresa
can
wanted to hop
go.
in.
That's
Please
cool.
go for it.
So I'm the child of creatives, and my parents moved to Atlanta when it was the Herald, the Black Mecca. So they were in that early stage of all the Black artists coming to Atlanta and being like, this is a place where our voices can be heard. So I was also that child of the poet and the other poet who had to like memorize the poem to say at the protest rally, because you're the child of creatives. And so for a long time I resisted finding my art, like becoming the poet that I am now and doing all the things that I do now. Because I was like, I'm the kid, I mean, I can remember and like as an adult, I appreciate these moments. There were moments in my childhood where my backyard had like a fire grill going, and Tony K. Bambara, Sonia Sanchez, Leroy Jones. These are people in my backyard making me give them tea, and I was bitching about it. But like as I grow older and into my own space and realizing no matter how far the activists kick the apple from the tree, you still close to the tree. Being able to like appreciate that part of my childhood. So my activism often comes in the form of education. I was a classroom educator for 30 years, and as an independent artist now, I am an independent contractor for education in the classroom. So I go into classrooms, I teach poetry slam, I teach poetry as healing, I teach all these things. And for me, I walk into I walk into so many classrooms where all the kids are Black and brown and all the teachers are white. And, when I used to walk in there with my 4 feet long hair covered in jewels, those kids would look at me like, oh my God, you look like me, you're shiny. And they would just like, and so my activism is more like I will go to the protest rally and be threatened and whatever, but I also understand that our young people need to see people who look like them. Our young people need to be in control of their voices, or at least understand that they have the access of a page that will accept their words and not call them anything but true. So my passion and my activism is working with young people for them to find their voice, throw it on a piece of paper, and then throw it in the faces of other people so that they hear. And with that, because I have done what I've done for a very long time, and I have a lot of very strange, I've had like a week of white people in my inboxes in virtual multiple spaces asking me what they need to do to fix what's happened. And I'm like, yeah, I can't help you. Keep talking to your people. But also, but the young people that I've taught are also in my inbox and being very grateful that they are able to have a conversation about what they feel is true, what they feel is real, and not necessarily being, in that position like I gotta convince them, but just like I said a thing, and I stood behind the thing that I said. So my activism largely stems with like putting these kids in touch with their voices and acknowledging and having them acknowledge that their words, their choices, their thoughts matter, and that they are our future. And if we aren't careful, they're going to put us all in a home, and it's going to be terrible. Just saying. Sorry. I'm a teacher.
Who's next? Who's next? Hop on in.
I'll say something about activism. I mean, the operative word is active and act and action. So you're definitely doing something, but in a sense, that's inevitable to piggyback on what Jerome said, using your natural talents, right? Your passions. So if you are pursuing your passion, you're already being active. I'm a poet, spoken word artist. I've actually seen you, Theresa, in Decatur that one year. And through that, that is some form of activism, though I may not be in these streets, I may not be getting locked up, but I'm also a teaching artist, also an independent artist. So throughout many outlets, you are being active, you are being an activist. We all are, in a sense, because we are invested in one goal and we are invested in making change and we are putting action behind that.
Awesome, awesome. Who's next? What does activism mean to you? Or what's your definition of it? It might be different from everyone else's. So go for it, Michael.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for everyone that has spoken. Absolutely enlightening, refreshing, and it's inspiring, and keeps us all, I think, motivated to see one another and to see the various prongs of activity that is being exerted on the many obstacles that we have in our upliftment as a people. So for me, activism is embodied in these words, that self-improvement is the basis for community development. And so it's really, I think, in harmony with what everyone else has said, having God-given rights, acting, actually doing something. And I think that that's very important. So while we are all striving for operational unity, it may not be uniformity. And so I think oftentimes we may want, some of us who may not really see things in a broad way, we want things to look alike, but there's an inherent value to everything that everyone is doing to try to alleviate and mitigate the suffering of our people, starting with ourselves. And so for me, activism is self-enlightenment. And then when you continuously are striving to enlighten yourself, and that's a never-ending process because there's something that you're always going to learn to do better. I think that that's part of the greatest thing, learning to love and respect the diversity of our efforts and finding ways to work synergistically with the diversity of our efforts.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think bringing up the rear, Atira.
Yes. So activism for me, like everyone has said, it's really being active in the thing that you are advocating for and the thing that you're defending, the thing that you're fighting for. Like Kearah-Armonie said, like the root of it is action, is being active. And that looks like a bunch of different things for different people. You can either be on the front lines, like a lot of people have been for the past year, where you're protesting in these streets, you're getting locked up, you're doing jail support, or it can be the teachers in the classroom trying to break down these really complex theories to their students who are now seeing the world in a different way and having to go home and have these conversations with their parents in a different way and trying to understand life completely different than they did before. It can be standing up for the little guy, like Jerome said. It could be, shoot, I didn't even know I was an activist as a kid because I was yelling at the different Santa Claus in Macy's. I didn't believe that there were different Santas they were offering us. I said, no, there's only one Santa. You can't lie to the children and ask them which Santa they want to see. Is it a Black Santa or a white Santa or an Asian Santa? I'm yelling at all the kids trying to abolish the whole system when my mom just wants a picture. That's activism. So it really looks like different things for different people as they grow and as they, go on throughout their journey. But it really is just being active in that fight. You can't just, things that we're seeing now, because language is changing with all of these new things that are popping up. We're hearing things like ally fatigue, allyship fatigue. A lot of the allies that we saw come out in, May and June, now they're tired. They don't want to hear about the issues anymore. They're like, okay, we're done. I know that you're struggling, but your struggle is sad. So I just don't want to hear about it anymore. Tell me what's on TikTok. And they want to put the issues in the corner. And it's like, no, you cannot call yourself an activist then, because you're no longer active in the fight that's actively still going on. You have to be present in the moment and present in fighting and advocating for all of these different things, whether it be, keep it a buck, basic human rights. You need to be active in advocating for those basic human rights every day in all of your facets, whether it be when you're at church with the pastor who doesn't want to talk about it, but we got to go there, or with that one professor that you don't want to bring it up with because it could hurt your grade, or with the person who's signing your check because you want that check, but you have to have that conversation. You have to be active in having those conversations and doing that work in all of these areas in order for real activisms to still be alive and true.
Many gems shared, but that allyship fatigue, yeah, we might have to do a whole podcast episode on that one. That felt touch and agree.
Because that to me is the very definition of privilege, right? Because we whether we're activists or not, right, we don't have the option of opting out of those conversations. I don't have the option of stopping the conversation with my son about being careful, right? I don't have that. This is an ongoing, a generational thing. I cannot opt out of telling my wife to be careful on the streets because a cop may roll up on you for no reason. And I can't opt out of feeling the way I feel, or my wife feeling the way I feel when her husband leaves the house and she worries whether her husband's going to come back. So those allies that opted in for a minute and decided fatigue, that's the very definition of privilege. And, we're not going to advance our cause in any way, shape, or form until we get that understanding to them. They can opt out. That's privilege. We can't, because it's on us. Our skin is looked at as a weapon, not my voice, not my hands, my skin, in which God gave me when I entered this world. So that's the very definition of privilege. And like you said, that's a whole different conversation.
Absolutely.
We got to call it out when we see it, when we recognize it. We have to.
Absolutely. So kind of to segue from that, I do believe that some of you guys did share, but I would like to give everyone the opportunity. What does your activism look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? If you can kind of give some voice to it, beyond some of the examples, like some specific details, because I feel like people are unclear on what activism is. It looks like one thing to them. Their idea of it is protest, or like it has to be a demonstration in the streets. But as you guys have stated, it looks like very different things, different levels, but it's all under this umbrella of activism. So, and anyone go for it.
I actually think that, with what's happening now, all those definitions are constantly changing. I think that, I mean, like, I'm cheating, because we're on the inner world nets. So I'm in the meeting, but I'm also looking at news articles, but I'm in the meeting. And one of the folks that were at that thing that happened last week, from Georgia, a banker, just committed suicide because he was arrested and right. So all this language is changing constantly, because we are kind of like talking to our choir. I mean, we've all heard no in various forms. We've all been like not allowed to do things by various systems. And And now all of a sudden you have a whole system that has never actually acknowledged no, being given a lot of no in a very short time, right? And I teach a lot of these folks' kids who like me, who love me, but also hear all that other speech and have to like reconcile all of that in their brain, right? And these are young people, these are children, right? And so they're watching and they're hearing, and now all this stuff is happening. And so the levels of trauma that are happening now are on such a big, such a grand scale, that all of activism is changing. You know, these people who have been duped and are affected, you know, they're going to need a lot of help in order to not infect and continue to infect. And I'm not saying it's okay. And also our young people who have been like feeling this and all of a sudden are like, yes, what my folks have been saying this whole time is now actually coming to a kind of a space where you can't ignore it anymore, right? We have a president that has been impeached twice. Twice. And we have a lot of young, I'm going to share this and then I'm going to stop talking. So when Trump first got elected, I was working at a school in Fayetteville, Georgia, that was majority immigrant children. And the day before the election, I went in there and everybody was like, it was like a middle school, you know, voices, sounds, everything, kids doing things. I walked in the next day after the election and it was like walking into a morgue. There was no sound, right? And the first threat I heard from a white child to a Native American kid was, now you can be deported. And so I had to go into my class and I was like, okay, we got to dial all this back. And I changed the entire curriculum that I was using. And instead of I am, it was a citizen is, a citizen does, a citizen will do, you know, and I have learned by watching. And so it changed. And I don't know if I changed any of those kids who felt really emboldened by hate being in power, but I hope I gave those kids who are being told they can be deported or they can be hurt or they can be harmed, a way to channel their voice and so that they felt protected within themselves. And then I complained and I got in trouble because I complained because, you know, I'm Black. But I complained and I went back into that classroom situation with new stipulations on my contract saying I could not talk about certain things. And I'm telling you to write poetry, tell your story, and now you're telling me that I can't allow these kids to tell their own stories. It was wild. And so I feel like, you know, activism is changing. And I think that as much as it's changed today, which is the 13th, by the 20th, it will have changed again. And I'm just hopeful that those of us who are committed to making sure that, you know, we have our voices, our young people have their voices, things change, things keep moving, stick to it while not actually showing up at the things where folks are going to show themselves, because this violence is not done. It's gonna get way worse. That's why I bought a week's worth of groceries and a lot of chips and some popcorn, and I got some hot chocolate in there and those little teeny tiny marshmallows, because I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna be safe in my house because I've been attacked enough in the streets when attending, you know, a protest and everything, and I'm gonna watch how they interact with each other. And then I'm going to reassess what my activism looks like, and I'm going to try to help their children. Our children first, and then I'm going to help their children because their children need help.
Come on in, Renee. Thank you so much, Theresa.
So I'm going to kind of segue a little bit differently, but everything you said, I hear you and I agree with you. Um, for the last few years, I've worked in, as my friends have said, I've gone to the whitest of white America. I left I left New York after 25 years, went back to Arkansas and left Arkansas and went to Dubuque, Iowa. Okay, 98% white people. And my issue that I started really having in these communities where they're talking about creating equity, diversity, and inclusion, where first of all, ain't none of us there, but okay, fine. But they want to tell me how my story goes. You cannot tell me my story. You can't tell me what it is to be Black. So I've had the privilege of sitting on several national boards and committees discussing and looking at implementation of policy um, for my field is I'm a Black woman in a field dominated by white males. And so, and the white females that are in there are engineers, and I'm not an engineer. So my focus is policy. I am a here it's called community services director. In other cities it would be public works director, but I'm over transportation, water utilities, parks, recreation, and streets and fleet, vital services. Okay. So in my previous life, one of the things I finally said, I said, it is not for me to fit in with you. I exist in your world. But you guys get shook. And I do not code switch. I talk like I talk like I talk. I said, you guys get shook when little old me walked in the room with a whole bunch of white people. I should be shook. But you get nervous. You want us to all have these little kumbaya meetings and stuff like that, the few Black folks. But y'all the one that don't know how to exist with us. We exist in your world, period. And so I said, and I have been very verbal about this. You need to get acquainted and get to understand who we are. It's not about us understanding y'all. We know y'all. And I've had that same conversation for the LGBTQ community, because it's always about this group of folks, the minorities. They the ones that's going to the meetings, but you're straight, white, male, misogynist, they not in the meetings, and then you have the uber do-gooders, I like you people who you like me as long as I am inferior to you. At the point where I speak better than you, where I'm more educated than you, that I'm more exposed to you, I become a threat. So for me, that's part of just speaking on it, because we can't have diversity. We can't discuss an equitable situation if you still think that I am inferior to you. That's an issue. And piggybacking on what you just said, Theresa, like they got to get over it. And they are having trauma. They are absolutely having trauma. So it's I don't make excuses for my Blackness. I don't make excuses for how I speak. I actually had a lady say to me, oh, do you talk jive? Girl, what is jive? I said, I speak. You know what that is? Well, yeah, this is an educated person. And that's the last thing I'm going to say. I have found, look, those ones that's running around and we see you a mile away. We know what we know. We know you got issues with us. You're not, okay. But it's the educated ones, that educated people that have not had any exposure to people that look like us, that I often have the most issue with. So that is part of it's like, how do you educate somebody who grew up thinking they were better than you, and all the time, no, you're not. So that is part of that. Now that part, I think our role is not going to change, because you're not going to put me in a corner. You're not putting me in a box. And that's what I feel like more so today. I find that people, they'll bring us into these predominantly white environments, and you're supposed to be, well, I'm not. And I tell them, don't let the lipsticks and the stilettos fool you, because I can get down with the best of them. So that is an issue, and that is going to be an issue as long until we have more people like Theresa educating them, hopefully. But it's holding your own, because we are not meek and mild. We who we are. So that's part of my activism as well.
Thank you.
If I could jump in on this,
Please do.
first of all, Theresa, I feel your emotion, right? Because it's every minute of every day for us as people. So I feel your emotion. I started so for me, the way activism looks, it takes on many different shapes. I'm going to start when I was 11 years old. My mother worked for Planned Parenthood in the Bronx. And she woke me up every Saturday morning, and she took me with her to work, and she put me in a room and said, I just want you to talk about your life and allow these kids in this room to talk about their lives. I had no idea what the setup was. My mother said, these are 12, 13, and 14-year-olds that are about to be fathers. So I'm asking you to just get in there, give them space, because even though I was 11, I was a tall 11. So my mother said, give them space and room to be able to speak. So it started, that's what activism started with me. As I grew to be a father, okay, my activism was as a basketball coach. I coached young men in Charlotte, North Carolina, 45 young men in basketball, and of them, 44, all 45 went off to college, 44 graduated. The one, we just haven't found where that young man is. Believe me, we're looking. But even though I have not coached these young men since 2010, I am still an integral part of their lives as a mentor. So that is another piece of activism for me. Also, as a financial professional, what I clearly became aware of is the fact that as much as we think our people have a money problem, it's not a money problem, it's an education of money problem. So I became intent on teaching economic empowerment and financial literacy. I teach it to young men and women as being part of the New York Urban League. And it is so vital for our people to be able to learn about money, how money works. Well, when George Floyd was murdered, one of the things I'd consistently done since 11 was I marched in the streets. I marched even in Lena, Louisiana, for the young men down in Louisiana. They called them the Lima Six. I've done it from there all the way up to New York. But when George Floyd was killed, it brought something to me when I marched. I'm 55. I don't have it in me. The young people's energy is powerful. I cannot keep up. So I took my financial education and my financial tools, and I created something called Buy Black for Life. The reason I created Buy Black for Life is we are using our dollars with people who support politicians and policies and businesses that seek to oppress us. In addition to that, our people, the Black dollar leaves the Black community faster than any other ethnic group. Therefore, if I can create something that we as a people can be together and we could spend that Black dollar with each other, circulating it in that Black community, I believe we can get to a point that we can close the gap on generational wealth. I'm about money. That's what I've done my entire life, my entire career. That's what I do. But I don't just put the people out there. We helped them with their businesses. So many people during COVID became business owners that really don't know. So we help them with that. I create programs and educational things. Every Saturday, we have what we call Education Saturday. I show them Black excellence. I want to kill the myth that we as Black people cannot give good service to our own. It's a myth. That's a myth that the other man has spoken into us that's allowing us to walk away from our own people's businesses. Because when you really think about it, the other man don't give us good business as well, but yet we keep going back. So we have to give our own people grace. Now, do understand something, and I'm clear about this. You can give them grace. You can let them know that there was an issue. Just because they're Black doesn't always mean, as you continue to be treated wrong, that you should continue giving them your money. There are other options that I make sure I add so that our people have options. It is something I'm passionate about. We are 170,000 strong. We are in all 50 states and in 99 countries throughout the world. And I am not going to stop until we build this generation of Black Wall Streets and real life Black Wakandas.
Thank you so much. That's how we know Jerome, actually, through that group. So we are thankful for you starting that up. I mean, you helped us out, so I appreciate it. Come on in, Michael.
I just wanted to know, will we have links, the links to like what Jerome, so that we can share those things and become
absolutely.
Please come on through. And I would love to have all of you on. We could have a round table just like this. This is what we do, honestly.
So who's next? What does your activism look like, feel like, sound like? I know the rest of you aren't stumped. Come on.
I could start.
Okay, come on, Kearah-Armonie. There we go.
Yeah, I'll say my activism definitely looks like community. It looks like family. It looks like my friends and family, keeping them close and working with them. Various projects, like you mentioned in my bio, 28 Shades of Black Magic. I think 28 Shades is important because it is a form of representation. And I think representation is a form of activism. It is a form of feminism. It is pro-Black, just to show that this is who we are. We actually exist, because you don't really see us on TV or in the magazines, or if we do, it's the same select 5 people. So it's important to know that there are more Black graphic designers, Black filmmakers, Black editors, Black people in coding, Black people who build things, Black people who make things, and Black owned businesses. So that's the community I have, like personally with friends and family, but also on the internet, sharing links. I remember seeing a screenshot of a tweet where someone was like, we need more Black owned businesses besides just shea butter and t-shirts. And it was like, if you Googled, you would find out that there are a ton of Black owned businesses. I'm pretty sure there's Black owned toilet paper, there's Black owned shoes, Black owned jewelry, Black owned baby clothes, like everything you could think of if you just look for it, because we're here. So that form of representation and just spreading the word and building with community, building with others is my form of activism, or just one of many.
Beautiful. Absolutely. We cover all of the gamuts. We are here, and part of my work is showcasing it. So we will definitely be linking to everyone, and I am on a journey to find every last one of us and bringing us together, because we do everything. If there's not something we don't do, and we do it excellently too. Who else? Hop on in. What does your activism look like, sound like? I know some of you guys did share briefly, but if you could flesh that out a little bit more. Atira, Michael.
Yeah, I can hop in. So my activism looks like defying the norms of the spaces that I'm entering. and I don't take that very lightly. I am, for lack of better words, I'm a stereotype in every sense of the way. I am a dark-skinned Black woman who was born and raised in one of the most impoverished, underserved, underrepresented neighborhoods in Brooklyn, New York. And I had the odds stacked against me and continued to stack them against myself and defy the norms of all the spaces I've been in since I realized that was going on. So even going to public school out here, you grow up and kids are telling you, hey, you talk white, or you sound white, or, you know, you must read a lot of books, or you just might be super educated in this, that, the third. And then you go on into higher education. And, you know, I went to a predominantly white institution for undergrad and grad school, and it's flipped. The narrative is, you know, it doesn't matter how good you sound because you're still the minority here. It doesn't matter how educated you might think you are, how many books you read, like whatever they told you back home, that don't matter here in these streets. And it was like, okay, cool. So I'm just going to shift that. I'm going to change that. And it was a wild experience for me, especially when you realize you are a small fish in a big pond. In high school, my debate coach liked to tell me that I was a raisin in a sea of milk. And getting the, you know, higher education, you learn that immediately when you are tasked with teaching your white professors, your decorated professors, what is the difference between equality and equity and what that means for lower income students and inner city kids. And you have to teach them what colorism is and why there's a difference between me, the dark-skinned Black student on one side of the classroom with locks in her hair, versus the lighter-skinned student on the other side of the classroom, and the difference between how you would address me and how you would address her, and how you would address both of our concerns, and how you'd even give feedback on papers. I had to do all of that throughout my education. So I learned very quickly that academia is a myth. The entire system is bullshit. It is called the ivory tower for a reason. It is white. It is ivory. We see this, we know this every single day. I love knowledge though. I'm an active student of the world, and I'm not going to let go of my passions in learning and being a researcher and, you know, being a writer and all these other things. So I've made it my goal and my task to shift the norms of academia. So I locked my hair while I was in college. I have a bright blonde streak in the front of my head working for the New York Senate. These are things that are not the norms. They go against the mold of what was created and the mold that we were told we could fit in. And I use that to my advantage in every sense of the way. I'm able to empower the people around me. You know, there are young people who are told, you know, they can't get a tattoo, they can't do this, they can't do that because they need to find a job and they need to build a living and they need to be respected in these streets. And I have never been in a space where my respect wasn't given at the end of the day. It might not have been given in the beginning, but there is nothing about me or my resume or my background that says I don't deserve respect. There's nothing about my personhood that says I don't deserve respect. So by the time I enter a room and by the time I leave it, I have changed and shifted the conversation in whichever way I needed to for the betterment of myself, the people around me in that room, and then the people who are walking in after me. My activism also looks like being in these streets. I was active throughout the summer. I was not an organizer. I stray away from the term organizer. I have a lot of amazing close friends that I have met throughout the past couple of months who I will carry with me for the rest of my life, who are amazing organizers who have started revolutionary organizations throughout this fight for racial justice and racial equity. So I've just been an active participant in that. You know, we've been marching every single day since the end of May. There has been a protest in New York City every single day since the very first protest in the end of May. I started in June with my best friend, and I marched from June to November. It's a little too cold now. My body can't handle that. You know, skin is clear, but the body is not as young as it once was a year or two ago. So I do what I can. But even in work, you know, I started in PR. I love my career. I love being a professional communicator. But, you know, I started in PR doing things that was consumer facing. You know, how are we selling products? How are we getting people to buy into this story? And it's like, okay, you want me to log into work and tell this story here, but when I clock out at 5, I'm going to a protest and tell a completely different narrative. I don't like your story no more. I found a way to navigate myself into the Senate. Mind blown, don't know how I did it, complete accident. Didn't think I liked politics, and now I'm here. But again, I'm able to shift the conversation and shift the narrative because young women like me do not exist in these spaces. We are still just like you mentioned earlier, we saw Cori Bush get on the floor today and get booed talking about the insurrection last week. No one should ever be getting booed talking about a violent attack on our country. She was a Black woman in a position of power where she is not recognized as being a woman, being a human. So let alone having a position of power, these people can't comprehend that. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm existing in these spaces and defying the norms of what it means to be in them. And that's what I consider my activism. I also consider my activism dragging anyone on Twitter who thinks I don't have the time, because these people really come up with some really crazy ideas and they think, you know, I'm gonna sit behind this keyboard and I'm gonna get my piece off and y'all gonna know that I'm smart, this, that, third. It's like, look, no, you know what you said, you know it was wrong, you know I'm gonna come for you, and you know I got the meme to go with it, so you know you're gonna be in the group chat laughed at. And all of that is activism. And also kudos to all of you, because the educators, the elders, the ancestors around us are so amazingly important. And it wasn't until this year, until 2020, like we said, it's actively still going. We are on December 40th of 2020. It wasn't until this year that I realized, you know, a lot of the young people around me also recognize and acknowledge, you know, how everyone before us has really laid out the groundwork and the framework for us to be doing the work that we're doing. So, you know, even if you're not out in these streets, you don't have your poster, you're not marching through the streets, you still did the work for years and for decades, and you laid the groundwork for us to be able to come in and do these same things. And even if you don't see it every day, because you don't know all of us, you guys didn't know me until about an hour ago, you all have impacted us in our storylines in our lives, and through that you've impacted this fight that we're in, and you're impacting the lives of all of those around us. And thank you. Just Ashe.
Atira, I would like to, did I say the name right? Yay! I would like to piggyback on something you said. Like, I feel like it's going to go this way, then it's going to go that way. But one of the things that I'm really grateful for when we talk about building community, I'm going to ask a question and just raise your hand. How many of you have spoken with, seen through this medium more of your family in the last year than you've seen in the last 10 years? That's the one thing that I feel like has like tricked up the activism on another level here, is like this what we're doing right here is accessibility, right? We've been talking about accessibility for a long time as a part of our activism, like people being able to access information, access spaces, right? And like I had a kid that I was mentoring. She was in a major car accident. She was a junior in high school. She spent her entire senior year at home, not being able to take all of her classes, and ended up having to repeat it when this whole thing was available and has been available. She could have attended all of her classes. She could have graduated on time because of accessibility. And so I feel like, you know, with all this stuff that's happening, like these like little sneaky ways of us like actually connecting back into our roots and into our family and into our groups has always been available for us, but they were keeping it away until they can make it profitable. Not they, you know, they, but you know. So like, this is one thing that I am really grateful for. I'm grateful for being able to be in a space where I can see people that I've heard about, but I have not actually been able to be in a room with. Unless you happen to be at some open mic in Georgia on a
Kearah-Armonie
summer night.
indicator.
But yeah, but I mean, I feel like this is an opportunity, along with all the changes that are happening in the world and all the changes that are going to be happening in the world. This is an opportunity to make sure that we keep in touch and keep in contact with a base of people who may not be able to be like right in our faces, but are able to hear our voices. We're able to like share ideas. We're able to bounce things off of each other. We're able to like keep this thing going, to where we as people of color are heard in more ways than just like our bodies on the streets or our hashtags in the news, or, you know, we are able to like be an impact. And this is an opportunity, and this space is an opportunity for us to do that, as well as all the changes that are coming. Like, I mean, I feel like my friend was right. March was 2020 last year starting, and that like March this year is going to be 2021 starting up again, but with new like agreements, with new with new contracts on the table, because I feel like all of us have like sat and listened and understood that half the people defending the Constitution have never actually read the Constitution. And yeah, I feel like we're like, hey, we read it because we were, well, I actually existed at a time when civics was a class in school. I know they took that out, but hopefully they will be putting that back in. It's a very important, civics. That's how I, okay, I'm gonna stop talking.
Michael, come on in. What does your activism look like, sound like, feel like?
Wow, there was so much said. Well, one of the things I want to just commend when we were talking about kind of, I guess, the generational and elder respect, but one of the things that I know is that we have right now as a people produced the strongest generation of Black people that has ever been seen in the annals of American history. And I think that it is gaps that keep us from having the continuity that is needed to sustain the gains that we can make and are making. Those generational gaps are a way that our open enemies have continued to cause dissension. So it's nice to hear people that are aware of contributions from the vastness of who we are. For me, I work in an educational setting. So for 14 years, I worked in a predominantly Latino community. And that was very interesting because, like Sister was saying, I have a rather chocolate complexion. So when I walk in, definitely looked at, and your articulation or lack thereof causes you to instantly be classified in a particular way. So working there, initially there was a great degree of apprehension, but over time and really just being myself allowed them, and knowing who I am. I think it's most important that we know who we are, because everyone comes from us. So when we know who we are, we know something about them as well. And we then begin to enlighten them about themselves. So I'm in a school dealing with Latinos, whether they be from Mexico, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and I can tell them without having to chuckle, scratch where I don't itch or anything like that, that your origin is in me. And that's not to be disrespectful, it's just to be factual. That I understand, that I want you to be clear that there was no Mexican, those were indigenous people, and what you call yourself as a Mexican was produced by of the indigenous people. So you look the way you look because somebody, did something to your people. So for me, that activism is in class, it's in the hip hop detox, mentoring young men and seeing the gifts and talents that they have, helping them to understand how music can be empowering, but knowing also that members of various communities, record executives, the same record executives that allow N words and B words for Black men and Black women to be hurled all day, you are never going to hear them, any recording artist, say all day. You're not going to hear them talk about town all day. It's just not going to happen. And so having our children understand the why of this, why you can hear shoot 'em up, kill this all day and not hear it about other communities, and understanding the power dynamic about that. And mentoring from, so from a hip hop perspective, even just with, regular academics, home life, understanding yourself so that you can better understand and respect the woman of your community and her immense value, because none of us would be here without her. So I think those are some of the things that, some of the ways in which how my activism looks.
Awesome. Perfect segue from music to Bryce Savoy. Um, what does your activism look like, sound like, feel like?
No, that was perfect. Like you said, a perfect segue, because for me, I mean, obviously it's changed over the years, but really as I got closer to God, music has been like my, main form of activism. Being a rap artist and kind of knowing, obviously the history of rap and how it's changed over the years, and how it, depending on how you look at it, there's a, negative connotation associated to just hip hop and rap in general, because of what's pushed to the masses and what's on the mainstream. And so for me as an artist, coming from Oakland, most importantly, home of the Black Panthers and just so much other stuff, it's like I have to represent that in my music. And so as I got older and, had, much more knowledge of self, I rap about things that, that I've grown up, experiencing in my community, but more importantly, as opposed to glorifying the violence and glorifying the drugs and stuff, and understanding that is a part of reality as well. For me, I've always been fortunate enough to kind of experience both sides of the spectrum. So the worst that the world has to offer, but also the great things and the stuff that, most people don't get to experience. I attended Howard University, the Mecca, graduated from there, got the opportunity to study abroad in Barcelona, Spain for 4 months while being there. And then upon graduating, spending 7 weeks at a Spanish immersion program in Vermont, of all places. And so I've had all of those experiences, but then I've also had the experience of, growing up in Oakland. And I grew up, me personally, from a middle class family, but my friends, my loved ones, and people that I associated with day to day weren't well off like that. And so I saw that, what comes with that, and just the experiences of growing up, in close to poverty, or growing up in environments where violence is prevalent. All of those things just gave me a different perspective of life. And so after learning all of those things, I, expanded that and put it into my music. And so now I'm able to reach people that I probably ordinarily wouldn't be able to reach with my music and with hip hop and rap. And let's be real, that's what, the youth listen to. That's what they attach themselves to. That's what they get. Most times that's where they get their learning from. If they don't have parents in the household, if they don't have, role models or adults to look up to, that's where they go to. And so for me, knowing that and understanding how important and how impactful your voice is, and more importantly, just in the music world, I take that and apply it to everything that I do. And so I guess you could come off as and that's another thing that I kind of struggle with early on, is just that whole, they put you in a certain box when you rap about positive stuff, because it's so different to what everybody else is rapping about. You automatically get put in he's conscious. Well, conscious means what? Being aware. And so I think that that's to be the approach for everybody, but it's not. And so as me, I kind of like just balance both worlds and kind of understand and see, but don't condone certain actions. And so I use my platform in music as a way to, be an activist. And then also the Black Neighborhood, which is a community organization me and my 5 childhood friends started in the Bay Area upon graduating 2015. A couple of us went to Howard as well, and then a couple of us went to San Jose State in the Bay Area. And so we all graduated at the same time, came back home. And this was at the height of, same thing is still going on, police brutality. It's the list of names who, have been affected by it. I can't really remember, like it's so many, but at that time it was still growing up. But this is us coming back as experiencing so much and thinking that, I think once you experience life in a different city, or you have a different environment, you're safe, you're able to kind of just grow. You get a sense of almost like that the world is changed. But then you get back home you get back to your neighborhood and people are still living in the same situations, your people, your loved ones, people that you love, that you would have thought or hoped that situations would have changed, it's the same. And so we got back and was like, how can we change? How can we help? And literally, when I tell you, we just went researching online. I found like the first nonprofit I could find, called the lady. The lady happened to say, oh, we have a grocery distribution this day and I actually need help. You guys come through. We came to the church, and literally from that idea, we've sparked to where we're at now in 3 different cities in the Bay Area, Los Angeles, New York, where all of our members live at. We do community food distributions. We do the turkey drive for Thanksgiving, Christmas, toy drive, youth empowerment program that we started at Defirmary Park, which is like the breeding ground, or like the meeting place rather, for the Black Panthers back in the 60s. And just doing.
Oh no. Bryce, I think we lost you for a
Everything
moment.
that we would.
Oh no. Okay, we will come back to you, Bryce. Right.
Man, that was going so well.
Right at the good part
So,
too.
man.
the enemy. Okay, so we will come back to more details on that once he gets back.
Huh.
But the next question is for
What'd you say?
everyone. Oh, are you back? We lost you for a moment. Like the last minute. Okay, looks like you're
Can you
back.
hear me?
Yes.
I didn't even know I was going. I was talking. I didn't even notice that I was out. But no, I mean, really, at the end of the day, like I was saying, it's just community, but providing spaces for Black people to just exist and be free. Like, we never experienced true freedom in America, and I know that, and I relate to that on a visceral level. And so, because of that, I'm trying to do all that I can as a human to replicate what I think freedom would mean for me, and pass that on to my other people, my people. And so, any way that I can do that, then that's what I'm going to do. And I think it's I don't know, man. It's just like, I look on social media, and this is obviously not the end all be all, but that's the great place to kind of get a perspective of or read the room, if you will, in terms of our state of where we're at. And everybody that I follow is Black, and I look at a lot of the conversations that's going on, a lot of the back and forths, a lot of the dialogue. And you can tell that it's coming from a place of hurt, a place of trauma, a place of not being told that you matter, that your life matters, that you mean something. And so, me noticing that and kind of, taking objective perspective, I just try to, be that light, be that, and understand that I'm a vessel, God put me on this earth to empower and uplift and be of service. And so I really don't try to focus on anything else but being the person that God, created me to be, and seeing myself the way that He sees me. And I realize that as long as I do that, then there's nothing for me to worry about. Chaos, life, the world is going to happen. Stuff is going to continue to happen. There's going to be a lot of stuff, as we've seen this last week. It's not going to stop. And so I feel like if I can find, peace in all of this and be able to kind of still live up my purpose, then I'm doing my job. And so that's kind of why I take pride in and do day to day, every day.
Awesome. Perfect. So the next question is related to kind of your influence and what has impacted you. Now we think of activism, and I'm saying we as a general, like not everyone in the room does this, but it always gets taught to us as eras or movements, and then it's like this lasted for this many years, and then nothing else was happening until this one event, and then now we had another movement. So I'm wondering, do you guys have an era that you look back to that kind of influences how you do the work now? Or has it always been something that's been in you? Or has it been a lot more granular? Like, I saw that this was something that I needed to address, and there's not really a movement that I look back to that is the reason why I do what I do. So,
Wait, Sam, can I say something real quick?
please do.
So just for everybody, I don't think I told you this, Sam. So just full transparency. So I'm currently in Oakland. I live in LA, but I'm from Oakland, and I come back once a month. And so I kind of told Sam earlier that while I'm here, my mother and I, we have a cannabis delivery service. And so I have to, if you've noticed me kind of going off the video or kind of, muting myself, is because while I'm trying to do this, orders are coming in. And so I just wanted to kind of like just give, be full transparency. If you don't see me or if I'm not in the Zoom, it's only because I'm working. And I would never I don't want to be disrespectful. Everybody's saying powerful stuff. And so I have to go for do this order, but I want to come back and let you guys know that. So that's it.
Absolutely.
But I'm here.
And I just have really whack internet. So it's like going like internet unstable. I'm like, if you mute if you turn your camera off, it'll try to stabilize. So I haven't been kicked off proper. So that's why I've been in and out, in and out, in and out. But to answer that question, I don't think for me, because I was born into a family of activists, I don't even know when it actually clicked on and clicked off proper. I just know it's in there now. But I do remember having this distinct feeling, and this is when I really started throwing myself into making sure that I worked in Black classrooms, and especially Black schools where the majority of the teachers were white, was when Obama was elected president, and then I get kicked out. What? That's crazy. Did I get kicked out?
No, you're here.
Oh, because everything went blank, and I was just like, I'm not anywhere. And then
I thought you got kicked out of the school. I was like, oh gosh, this is a good story. Come on, tell it.
I've been kicked out of schools for a long
Okay, good.
time. I'm that kid. But no, when I got elected the first time, I was like, this is great, but also this is going to change a lot of things. And then when it happened the second time, I was like, okay, white folk gonna lose their mind, because this was not supposed to happen like this. And I mean, I don't know how many of you have ever listened to any of Obama's book, but The Promised Land, he has one line in there where he says, where he talks about this moment. And whoa. So I knew after 8 years of a Black man being in charge of a thing called a White House, everything was going to flip sideways crazy and do all the things. I did not, however, believe it would go this far. But clearly, even I was generous of how off the rails can be, right? So when that happened, that was when I was like, okay, so we need to talk to these, little Black children. Because I was having kids I could be anything. I could be president. I'm like, yeah, you got to do work and you got to do things. And just because you are in the same skin as this man who is president right now and doing such a great job, there's work involved. We as Black people have been built up to work 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times as hard to get, preaching to the choir. And so just having be able okay, kid, yes, you can be, but this is what takes it. And just trying to keep level heads on brown babies and Black babies and be it's true, you can, but work and other things that you may not have access to because you're not it's a lot of things. So I think for me, work in schools became way more important when Obama became president. And then the second time I just kicked in extra hard and signed up with other groups where I can go into more schools and be and let's talk. And you are awesome and powerful and let's work. And here's your voice and, all those things. So that's when that kicked in for me. With adults though, it was way earlier because because I'm a queer Black woman in Atlanta, and as a performer, I've never been closeted in any way or form. I have a lot of arms in a lot of places that I wouldn't normally have. And just being able to tell these people okay, so we find ourselves in a situation where we have a voice. We have a place where we can speak that voice. We have venues where we can amplify that voice. what does that voice say, and how are we going to be consistent to the things that we are promising to our communities, because we will not be liars in any of this, right? And so pushing that agenda is what I did with the adults, because, sometimes they're harder to reason with than the children, and it's weird.
Valid. Very much so.
So I always have to piggyback off of you, lady. I love what you said. One of the things that is often I find myself sharing with us, and especially younger people when I speak with them, our Black excellence is constantly compared to mediocrity. Okay. I don't care how excellent we are, we still find ourselves compared to someone else's mediocrity. And that, when President Obama was elected, I knew some things I boo-hooed. I was like, yes, but I also knew, okay, this man is not mediocre. And fast forward to today, there are still people that will put this out their mouth and say, well, Donald Trump is just as smart as Barack Obama. I've had people tell me that. And I'm like, what the hell you say? I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to cuss. But I'm just saying, our excellence, and that's why it's Black excellence, because we surpass. And I basically have only been in public service. This is my 10th year. I was, prior to that, I was in New York, I was in finance, and I was making good money, sold my soul, and almost died. And that's another story. And finally I woke up, I said, you know what, I'm going to walk with my vision, what my calling is, And so when Donald Trump in 2016, I've met him before, long time ago. He was an asshole. He was an asshole when I moved to New York. I'm sorry, I'm not saying nice words. Are you gonna bleep this?
We're not censoring anyone.
Okay.
Unless where we have to.
but at the end of the day, when I first moved to New York in 1988, and I worked for a venture capital firm, and Trump was doing all this bankruptcies and stuff, and these guys were like laughing. They were like, well, you can do that. But he was not an accepted part of New York's money. He was not. He's not well heeled. Okay. He's not. And so when this guy was doing dog whistles, what wasn't even dog whistles, you calling Mexicans rapists, you got stuff to say about us, you grabbing women by the private parts, all of these things, that was one of the things that I really became more verbal, because you are not going to disrespect people that look like me and compare our greatness to this mediocre narcissist. No. And have grown to have the ability to say that with a straight face and no fear. So that was one, because I was very radical growing up, 6 years old, one of a few Black kids, integrating a public school system in McGee, Arkansas, and was very radical, and then got to college and just kind of settled down, and was settled down up until about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. So, because I realized that the work we did a long time ago, we back where we was. I'm back where I was in 1968, okay? Like, real talk. I am back where I was in 1968. And it's no way you could have told me that in 2021, we would be here and we would have these beautiful, young, articulate, expressive women and men having to go through the crap that we already went through, because we were supposed to be paving a better way for them. So that's how I got radicalized again. That's how I got verbal again, and have made intentional choices to work in areas where there's nobody that looks like me, because you need to understand that we can go anywhere we want to go, and it's not about fitting in. I'm not homogenous. Ain't nobody on this thing homogenous. I'm not homogenous. So that's part of my whole, I had to, like, you're not gonna put me in a box. So that's my story.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So,
Come on in.
and I amazing. First of all, for me, it was a mountain climb with some stops along the way. So when I think about it, I'm going to start with the point that I got to coaching, because when I was younger, I was that radical that you talk about, Renee. Also, my mother instilled in me, because I would sit at the footsteps of my mother, because my mother did work with the Black Panthers, right? So my mother would instill in me, Jerome, you have to find a balance, strike a balance between Malcolm X, because I thought I would be him, the next one, and Martin Luther King. That somewhere you have to strike that balance. I strayed way over to the Malcolm X, to be honest with you. My mother wanted me to come a little bit over the other way. So one of the things she instilled in me, and Renee, you again talked about this earlier, the most difficult people that you are going to encounter as you do this work are your own people. So my intent was to just worry about my little, bubble that I was in. And by dropping the pebble in the pond, hopefully it'll create ripples along the way, right? So that's where the coaching and the mentoring came in. Then as I continued up that mountain, and became more educated in finance and financials, and really seeing what our people were struggling with, because I dealt with a lot of our people early in my career, and the conversations that they were bringing into me, and it's me listening, the difference in the conversations that I would have with them as opposed to the conversations with white people, I knew I needed to do more education with our people. So then there was that mountain. As I climbed up the mountain, one thing that really had an impact on me is during the Obama years, and Theresa said that was her moment. For me, that was a defining moment in that I sat back. I said, we got there. This man has been elected twice. We are good. However, when the current occupant got there, and I do not like to say his name, or I'll say the outgoing current occupant got there, I realized I wasn't the only Black man that had done that. And I felt like me and us as Black men slipping from our work allowed the current occupant to be there. So I became more passionate about my work in the community. That's another mountain. The current part of the mountain where I am, March of 2020, I got COVID. Days 7 to 11, as per my doctor, are the worst days. And I can tell everyone here, it was day 9, I thought I was going to die. Sat on my bed, my wife had it as well. She would not leave our bedroom because she thought the same thing that I did. Called my children, let them know your father's not going to survive this. I did survive the next day. However, the next 2 nights, I wanted to die. That's how much I was suffering. It was nothing, COVID is nothing to play with. And I suffered to the point where I was in our back bathroom screaming for God to take my life because I cannot do this anymore. I heard a voice that second night, and it's only the voice of God that said, lay down, son. Your fight is over. I laid down. 36 hours later, the temperature broke. My wife said, get out of bed and start moving. I knew that God saved me for a reason. From that day forward, the work that I have done is relentless. It's going to be relentless because he gifted me another shot at this by saving me from COVID. So that's where I am on the mountain now. I don't think I've reached the top as of yet, but there is a mountain for me to climb. So that's been different periods for me.
Gosh, Jerome, you trying to take me out? I'm sitting there trying to hold it together. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was very powerful. So who's next? Do you look back to a certain era or movement in regards to what influences your own activism now? Or is it kind of the day by day, hey, something happened to me and that's really fueling me?
Well, for me, Jerome said something earlier, and it reminded me. I'm a transplant patient, a post-transplant patient, coming up on 10 years post-liver transplant. And when I was blessed to make it through it, I had some friends from elementary school, one in particular, who reminded me of the very thing that Jerome said. He said, Michael, he said, I'm glad that you made it. He said, because I never had the opportunity to thank you for always defending me. He was a shorter guy, you know, bully. People love to do that, you know. So his older brother and I were good friends, but his older brother was not always around. So, pardon me, I would step in for him sometimes. So I found that to be part of a pattern. When I attended high school, I encountered a quite racist teacher, and something happened one day in the cafeteria. I didn't like it, and I walked around to all the tables and told everybody on the count of three, we're going to sing "Fight the Power." So I set that off real good, and as I had him for the next period, interestingly enough. And so when I went into his class, he said, look, Mike, we're not going to have any of that fight the power manure. Of course, he didn't use that word. But, you know, from there, I attended, you know, listening to Renee, she said she became less radical when she went into college. When I went to college, I encountered a brother whose father was in the Nation of Islam, and he began and thinking about Savoy and his cultural revolution, is what I'll call it. He began to explain a lot of the music, Rakim, Poor Righteous Teachers, and the things that they were saying. So that, of course, led me to reading. That, of course, led me to the Nation of Islam. And for me, it's really just educating. That's what, just being able to have one-on-one conversations, you know, a lot of people get out, they sell the paper. Yes, I can do all of those things, but it's those intimate conversations, because that's what ultimately touched me. It was someone taking the time to have an intimate conversation with me, and ultimately picking up books that absolutely and unequivocally changed the trajectory of my life. I became a vegetarian approximately 24 years ago. Currently, I eat one meal every other day. And I think that it's just those type of things, having the opportunity to explore the why. You know, we have people who contribute so much to our advancement, and sometimes we don't get to hear people bearing witness to how they have contributed. And so for me, it's not a time period. It's really a collective effort. Everything from elementary school, my mother, teachers, peers. I think I just have a comprehensive background in terms of how I was influenced and what molds me. And for me, what stands out number one is just educating ourselves.
Awesome. Awesome. Who's next? Hop on in. Tira, have you already?
Yeah, I think it's me. We keep losing people. This Wi-Fi taking us out.
Yes, the Wi-Fi, the enemy. Um,
Um, I try to think about the moment that radicalized me, and I would love to say it was little me trying to, rally up the kids in Macy's because they really tried to turn Santa into this capitalist Ponzi scheme. But I think what radicalized me is being born othered and just always being cognizant of that in various spaces and various capacities. Um, and I appreciate that all of our stories and all of our narratives are rooted in education in one way or another. I think that's very true to Black livelihood. I had a teacher in middle school who I loved to death, and she was a humanities professor. That's where I really learned, okay, this thing that I have with writing, with reading, like it can go somewhere. Until one day she told me, little girl, you are not allowed to read Harry Potter. We're all going to read books, and we're all going to have our book club, and you have to fill out your book report. You, specifically me, could not read Harry Potter, anything that had to do with magic, this, that, the third, but she allowed me to read Langston Hughes. So that didn't add up in my little brain. I was like, there's something going on here that out of this room of students, I'm being told I can't read this specific thing and everyone else has the free will to do something else. And it wasn't until, we got older, my best friend, who surprisingly has lasted with me since then, she said, I didn't like you when you first got to that school because you came in on the first day and you just wrote an essay in an hour, like out of nowhere, and everyone else just didn't do the work. And I was like, well, yeah, because you guys were bad little kids. Y'all were lazy. You didn't want to do anything. And it was in that moment that I understood why I was othered. My professor saw something in me that she wasn't able to see in the other students. And that's no fault to them. It's more to what we teach our little brown and Black kids when they're growing up about who they can be and the places that they're allowed to exist in. So I learned that very easy and decided that's not how I'm going to navigate the world. However, I can shift it, I'll shift it. So I learned how to be an educator in my own way. While I was in high school and forced onto my school's debate team, everything I've done in my life has just been a radical accident. Just God really just said, I'm gonna drop her here and there. Started debating in the New York City Urban Debate League, made top speaker, did all the things I had to do, loved it to death. And they allow you to be a judge. So I went from, on Saturdays, I'm competing in the high school division, and on Sundays, I'm judging the middle schoolers. And they would say, okay, judge the middle schoolers, give them feedback, critique them. And I would look at the critique and feedback I was given on Saturday in my rounds and then realize, okay, there's a big difference between what you all are telling me and what I would tell the students after me, because the middle school students after me, they need to hear all the things I'm not being told. They need to hear the encouragement, but they also need to hear this is where you're going to fix your issue. Your case can be so much stronger if you just tweak this one thing right here. And if you pay attention to what this other person is saying, you will knock them out of the park in this way. And there were just little minute details that I realized weren't being addressed. And I just chalked it up to the generational differences. There are communication barriers everywhere. So there were differences between what the older judges thought I needed to be communicated with and what they thought I needed to be told versus what was going to best support me and my growth at that stage. So I was able to give that to my younger students and end up mentoring. And then I went on, when I got to undergrad, I started coaching debates. So I went from being a high schooler and being a judge to now, this was at the end of undergrad. So I was coaching for 2018, 2019, before the world went up in even more flames than usual. And I love those students to death because they were looking at me and they're like, oh my gosh, like she's coming from college. And oh my gosh, I don't even know how to apply for school. And my parents don't even understand the financial aid package. We're first generation. What is this? And you're talking to me about debate and how am I going to use this in the real world? And I'm like, well, honey, I started debate when I was your age and I did this, that, the third at your age. And now at that time, I was in undergrad and I was already working. I already had a 2-page resume. I already started a business. I did the things that I needed to do because I was able to grow and nurture in the stage that they were in. But if they weren't told that they can do this, if it wasn't communicated to them in a way that they could understand and interpret, it wasn't going to get anywhere. It was going to fall on deaf ears. So I used my ability to understand those communication barriers to really push forward and really help pave the way for those around me, and then carry that on throughout my education, throughout my career. If there's one thing that definitely did radicalize me, in this notion of being othered and what that does to someone and what it does to how they interact with the world. While I was in undergrad, and this was, time escapes everyone, this was fairly recent. This was the end of 2019. My school does this yearly campaign called, what is it? Is it Week of the Peacemaker? It's during Week of the Peacemaker. This one particular weekend, their theme was homelessness. They were trying to raise awareness for homelessness. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn. I know what this is. I know what this looks like. Some way, somehow, the people in the room that got the event signed, passed, approved, the flyers put up on the campus, decided that the best way to promote and advocate for homelessness was to mandate for the Greek organizations on campus to sit outside on one of the main building's portico overnight. The theme was they were supposed to stay there until like midnight, past midnight, and dress as though they were homeless and live in cardboard boxes. And God had to tell me to calm down, because I just couldn't understand how you can look at such a serious issue and decide that is the face of it. That is what it looks like. And I said, if it's not me, it's going to be someone else. And if somebody else addresses it, it's not going to be pretty. So I'm going to do what I have to in this moment to get this situation fixed. I've never put an email together so fast. I talked to the provost, I sent it to the president. I went to every single higher up that I knew I can go to that was above the office that got it approved. And I was like, we got to talk, because this right here, you have students on your campus parading as though they're homeless, running around on Snapchat with boxes on their head, and you think you're solving something. You think you're educating someone, whereas you have actual registered students on your campus who in their financial aid packages have to check off that they are homeless. When they're not on campus, they are without a stable home, or they need extra substances. They need extra utilities and everything, because they do not have the proper access. They do not have the equity they need to carry on this type of education. Where they're going home, they're not going to a house. They're not going to an apartment. They're going to a shelter. They're going to their car. They're living on their friend's couch. You have students who are actively living this experience every day. And you just told them that you don't know them, you don't see them, you've never heard them, you've never respected them. Anytime that they put it on their application, you ignored it, you just put it and filed it in, and you let the taxes people and the IRS figure it out. And if something was flagged, then you'll pay attention to them. But other than that, their story meant nothing. Their existence was just barely there. When they're in the classroom, they're a student, and when they're outside of it, they just don't exist. And that was not okay. They actively othered an entire group for absolutely no reason. So I did what I had to do in that moment to speak up for them, knowing that there were language barriers, knowing that there were communication barriers, knowing that it could completely backfire in my face. But the same way, if nobody told them little kids in Macy's that something's funny with these Santas that they showing them, no one was going to sit down and tell these higher ups who think they're doing such great work in the community that the work that they did just meant absolutely nothing. And that was a defining moment for me in my academic journey. It meant a lot to the people around me, and it showed me the power of speaking up. I'm always a big fan of playing second fiddle. I believe in being the chorus, because you need that great chorus in every track, and everybody else, y'all sing that verse and y'all love it, but when it comes to that chorus, that hook, that's what you remember. That's what you really feel. I've always believed in playing those roles and being the supporting character, and this was a moment where I had to step forward into the main role. And had I not done that, I wouldn't have impacted as many students as I did. I would not have changed the history of that event, because apparently it's been going on for decades. And alumni were reaching out and saying, oh, this is something that's always been going on, but anytime we addressed it, they just ignored it, or we didn't know what to say. It was just a crap show. So now that I have made it to this point in my life where I'm my fully actualized main character, I realized that, that is the thing that radicalized me, being othered and seeing what it does to someone, seeing what it meant to be othered, and seeing all of the others around me, and how we can really shift that narrative. Because if you think about it, if you have this main group and they say you're other, but this person is other and that person is other and that person is another, we have a lot more others than we have that thing. So it's totally possible to get rid of that thing, to eradicate that thing when we band together, when we support one another, or it's completely possible to radicalize and shift the power within that thing. There's so many structures, so many power dynamics in this country, in this world that need to, I believe in abolition. Tear it all down, burn it, I don't care, get rid of it. And it's absolutely 100% possible when we understand our own positions in these narratives, when we realize we are the own actualized main characters of our stories, and what it means when we all bring it together and how we can really push forward. So yeah, lots of words to say. That is how I've been radicalized.
Beautiful, beautiful. Kearah-Armonie, hop on in. Do you look back to a certain movement or era in terms of what's influenced your own activism, or is it really kind of anecdotal, like something happened to me, something happened to someone else, and I've decided to step in?
So I do not particularly have a certain moment in time to reference, and I don't really have an anecdote either, like many others who have spoken, but it's definitely a journey. It's ongoing and ever growing and ever changing who I am as an activist. I do remember one particular moment, the fall 2015 semester. I was finishing up my senior thesis in undergrad, and I was editing a short film compiled of protest footage that one of my classmates had shot, and I added some of my spoken word poetry to it. And it was in that moment that I was like, this is my work. This is what I was put here to do, the spoken word and the film. And the way that I was able to connect those two art forms so serendipitously, because it was not my original intention for that to be my thesis film. I felt very lost in this class. I studied documentary. All my classmates had scripted films that were already shot. I didn't know what I was going to come up with until this person approached me with the footage, and I decided to put my poetry in it, and that truly represented who I am and the work I do and the work I will continue to do and put out into the world. So my activism looks like representation, as I said, but also representing and supporting Black experiences, all Black experiences, all Black, queer, women, femme experiences in ways that people choose not to see.
Awesome, awesome. Bryce, are you there? Can you hop in?
Yep, I'm here. I'm here. I could I'm in the middle of driving. Wait, you guys can hear me okay and everything?
Yes. Do you have a specific era or movement that you look back to, or are you influenced elsewhere?
Yeah, no, for me, I vividly remember when it kind of everything started for me. It was 2015. Just moved back to Oakland from DC after graduating, undergrad, and it was just kind of like a confusing time for me because I didn't know what was next. I felt like I was lied to in a sense. I thought, growing up, I was told, go to school, get a good education, you go to college. Once you graduate, you'll get a high paying job, start your family, all of that stuff. And so, here I am, 22, 23 in debt. Really no guidance, broke, all of these different things. And I'm going back living with my mother. And so it kind of just humbled me. It humbled me 100%. And so once I got back, the great thing I had was my friends, my people who I went to college with, or that my childhood friends as well, who were, just graduating from college. So we're kind of like all in the same level of understanding, if you will, in the same search for what's next. And so at that time, I can't remember the date or when it aired, but PBS put together a documentary, and it was on the Black Panthers. It was called The Vanguard of the Revolution. I'm not sure who in here, seen it or heard of it, but it was a great, great, great documentary. The man who directed it is his name is kind of slipping my head right now. But anyways, that documentary came out, and one of my friends, Corey, who also is one of the founding members of the Black Neighborhood, he called me up and he was just like, bro, I was already planning on watching it, but I hadn't gotten to it yet. So he was like, hey man, yeah, I watched the documentary, man. It's so powerful. We should watch it together. And so I'm like, all right, yeah, come to my house. He came over. We watched the documentary, and that was like the first time now, like I know now, that the Holy Spirit, led me and guided me, and I knew that and talked to me, because after watching that documentary, literally I started putting pen to paper. I started calling people. I started like just organizing everything. I didn't know what it was, but I already had the name, the Black Neighborhood, from a prior conversation with somebody in DC when I was out there in college. And so it was like the dots started connecting, like rapidly. And I think the best thing about it was watching that documentary. Growing up, I had a somewhat of a good understanding of the Black Panthers, but I didn't really realize how they walked the same places. They frequented the same areas, the same locations. They were me. And I didn't know that. And so to actually see that footage, actually hear them talk, actually see where they formed a lot of this stuff at. Like, that just was mind blowing to me. So an epiphany went off from there, and literally from that day, we've been, active ever since. But it started with seeing that, like that representation, and not only seeing it, but being at a certain level of understanding to kind of even internalize what that meant and how powerful representation of people who looked like me and came from where I came from, doing things that changed the world forever and even to this day. And so like from there, it was like, okay, we have to do something, and we have to do it in our hometown. We have to do it now. And so that kind of like, that was the moment I would say, well, I know that I found my purpose. Literally from there, I was able to use that energy and put it into the music. So now I had, I've always been doing music since age 11. So about 17, 18 years, 17, 18 years. But this was the first time that I had something to talk about. It wasn't just rapping. It was me rapping with a purpose. It was me, having something to stand for. And so everything just connected literally from us watching that documentary and then forming Black Neighborhood. And so like, 6 years later, here we are. But I can honestly say that's really where it all started for me.
Perfect. Now, I believe this will be my final question, but it's kind of the most important question because we all come from different generations. We've got a few different spans. Judging by kind of our influences, where we showed up in the world and whatever era it ended up being when we were born, how do we, what's our best course of action to work together across the different generations? Because there's different outlooks, there's different approaches, there's different ways that we consume media, there's different ways we use the English language. Different phrases that pop up might not gel really well across the generations. Some are like, yeah, okay, this new thing, oh, all right. And then it was like, okay, wait a minute, you need to explain, like what BIPOC is. That popped up for me. I was like, okay, we got a new thing. All right, let's start using it. And other people are like, I have no clue what that is. but like, how do we work together? What is our best course of action to make sure that all of our needs are being met as best as possible? I know there's a lot of needs to be met, but do you guys have any ideas? I know you don't have to have all the answers. None of us will have all the answers, but what is your outlook on the working together across the generations?
If I could jump in on that, because this is something I have been talking about for years, right?
Okay.
Meeting young people where they are, right?
Okay.
We, and I'm 55. A lot of people in my age group want to tell young people how to do activism. Yet how we did it, the younger people will come back to us, and I'm saying this because I had it with my own 32-year-old son who said to me, but Dad, that didn't work because you were still in the streets. You've been walking and protesting since before I came here, and now I'm out here doing it. So that did not work. I'm okay with the young person giving them guidance, giving them advice, right? But we have to be intentional about meeting young people where they are. In addition to that, I've also been very intentional about saying I feel as if churches have failed our communities. And I say that because how many young people go into churches and they're told, sit in the corner and be quiet? There was a situation I remember years ago, my wife's daughter, and she's a grown up right now, went into our church, and I'm sorry, there's motorcycles in my neighborhood, excuse me. And she was chastised by an elder by the way she dressed, right? And she wasn't dressed provocative, but the bottom line is, that's a grown woman you're talking to, number one. That grown woman has parents, number two. Who are you to speak to her in that way and judge her in that way? Our churches are places of judgment instead of places to allow us to open up and allow people to come in, especially young people, so that we could share ideas and we could share community. All that has happened in our communities. No place, in my opinion, is better set up to be able to start the healing for our people than churches. But yet, we want to tell our young people what to do instead of us meeting them where they are. Until we get out of our old way of thinking and go and meet them where they are. Bryce talked about music. No, I don't listen to hip hop anymore. I used to be a rapper myself. However, I do know a lot of young people identify with hip hop and identify with music. I can teach you anything that I want to through hip hop. I could sit here right now and in 10 minutes put a song together for hip hop. So meeting young people where they are, and they are a hip hop generation, they are a social media generation. If we go to where they are, we can then create amongst us all some ideas that are going to inspire our communities and change our communities. So for me, meet our people where they are. It starts with us, and it starts with churches as well.
Awesome, awesome. Who's next? Hop on in. How do we work together? What's our best course of action to do so?
Well, I'll just come on, get this over with real quick. I agree wholeheartedly with what Jerome said, and I would like to just add that there's a respect that must be given from elders to the youth. And I think sometimes that respect must look like being quiet. So I don't think I've spoken as much as I typically do because I really want to learn. I think the greatest honor or title next to brother that any human being can wear is a student. So I came here with the intent of being a student, and I've learned a lot tonight. And that's, I think, the disposition that we must take to be students, to be servants. I think someone else said earlier this evening, we must learn to serve. So taking whatever it is that we know, whatever our skill set is, whatever our gift is, being able to listen so that we can hear the need. And once we've identified the need, if we can't serve the need, connecting that individual or group of individuals to someone who can best service that need. I think that is one of the most integral ways in which we can begin to bridge that gap, serve one another, and make sure that our energies for self-improvement being the basis for community development is almost like what Jerome was speaking of from a financial sense, making sure that those resources start circulating in the community more. So like this is an awesome forum, and there are many people with many dynamic things already going on, but how disparate are we? So we are not functioning collectively. And when we begin to function collectively, then there is no need within our community with which we don't already have the answers to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who would like to hop in next?
I'll go. I wanna. So Mike, I wanna. So based off what you said, I wanna flip it and say that it's up to us as millennials to have respect for our elders. I noticed a lot of, especially for for millennials in here, you guys probably have seen this on social media, but there's been this saying or stuff that, oh, we're not our grandparents, or we're not like our grandparents. And for me, that's like the ultimate slap in the face, because like you're right, our grandparents had to endure way, 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 way more than we've had to. And even still, and it's, you don't never want to compare pain and trauma, but if we're being honest, if we're being real, our grandparents, our ancestors had to endure way, way more. And so I noticed that that's one of the main things that I'm, big on, is just respect, And then I think other than that, it's really just, love, coming at everything from a place of love, and place of grace. There's especially obviously with our elders that have, so much wisdom, but we all know it, even the Bible, Corinthians, chapter 13, which are my favorite, chapters and verses in the Bible, talks about love. And it's like, if you don't, love means nothing if I mean, wisdom or all of these different things that you want to pass down don't mean nothing if it doesn't come from a place of love. So I think that is really where a lot of the disconnect may come from, and especially in the times that we're in now, is very, very emotional, tense times. I think that, and I see more than often than not, that people don't want to communicate and have dialogue. People want to be right. Everybody's trying to be right. Everybody wants to, be the person that says the right thing, or does the right thing. And it's like, we're all, nobody is above anybody. In God's eyes, we're all the same. So I think it really just starts with us being able to kind of like have that understanding and come at everything from a place of humility, and realize that we all going to fall short of the glory of God. Like, we're not perfect. Nobody on this earth that's perfect. So I think we try to like bridge the gap with that, and then understand that we both have, obviously elders with all the wisdom and just experience that you have in life. You have so much to share, but us as, youth and as younger adults, we have a lot to share as well. I think if we can like, find a common ground and be able to kind of just come at everything from a place of love, compassion, understanding, and dialogue, healthy dialogue, I don't see, why we can't reach, new heights. And so that's kind of what I really and focus on, and try my best to advocate for in everything that I do and say, really.
Beautiful, beautiful. Jump on in. Who's next?
I could jump in.
Come on in.
First of all, echoing everything that everyone has said, this has been wildly amazing. And I'm very, very glad that this question was met with the passion and vigor it is, because I have been to some panels with this exact question, and hell was on earth, for lack of better words. So I am very glad that this is going
Well,
how it
shout
is.
out to me for the casting.
Shout out to
Like,
you.
thank you.
I had to hold my breath for a second. I said, oh no, I'm having about this. Definitely agree with everything that everyone has said, especially echoing the points on, meeting each other where we're at and being rooted in love. Something that I'm definitely hoping for is being more graceful with the people around us when we're communicating with them. Something that I've learned is that, especially within the Black community, love is always rooted in everything that we're doing and in all of our practices in some ways. But something that we've noticed throughout generations is that we'll meet our younger people, and this is even for millennials, we'll meet our younger people with tough love because we think that's what works best. And then we'll meet them with grace afterwards when we see that the tough love didn't kick in. I put so much work into this kid. I'm trying to keep him out the streets. He still fell into a bad pattern. Now I got to pour all this love into him to show him that the world is a soft place and that he can come home and he doesn't have to rely on these things. But because I've already given him this tough love, he doesn't know how to read the things that I'm saying to him. He does not know that I'm meeting him where he is. He can't feel that the right way, or she can't feel that the right way. So if we try to flip our conversations, shift our narratives a bit, and start with love and grace versus one and then the other, I think we'll get far. And another thing that I would definitely love to see, which is something that I'm seeing here, which I really do love, unfortunately, something that we've seen within our community is our attachment to respectability politics because of its proximity to power. And what that means is something that we see, and it shifts from generation to generation, but something we see is, when younger folks talk to the older generation before them, they're usually met with, you can't talk to me like this. I'm not your friend. I'm your elder. I'm not one of these kids on the street. You address me as this, that, the third. And if I want to hear what you have to say, then I'll hear it. But if I don't, and I don't care, and it's not going to pay my bills, you stay way over there in that corner. And you can talk to me in this way when you make it to my age, when we're here, and then we could be on the same level. But in reality, you're continuously going up. So the power dynamic is always off. And it's that need to hold on to that proximity to power that damages a lot of relationships. And it's understandable. As a people, we have continuously been denied power. We've continuously been denied access, autonomy. We've been denied our likelihood. We've been denied the ability to love openly. So when we're able to say within our sex, it's okay, I'm at this point in my life, I'm at this age, I've got it. I've made it. I did everything I had to do. I have all my badges. You are down there. When you make it up here, then we'll be on the same page. But until then, no. This proximity to power is very damaging. And that's not to say in all of our conversations, it has to be, we're all on the complete same level. Like, no, we understand, especially this group here, we understand that the elders before us mean a lot and they did a lot, and we are always going to respect them. And no matter what you say, I don't care if you told me to say your first name, you are going to be Miss, Ma'am, Uncle, Auntie, because the respect is there, the love is there. And we also understand that for the younger generations, yeah, y'all kids, y'all youngins, but y'all are built different. Y'all are stronger. Y'all are really built for these streets. We in this group on this Zoom are able to understand that. If we took that narrative and was able to spread it across the community, across the diaspora, life would be so much different, because we'd realize this need that we have to acquire power is what's keeping us from empowering one another. So once we really let go of that and let go to our need for that and stop letting power and this proximity to what it means to be powerful in this world be rooted in our identity, then we'll be able to communicate better and effectively create change a lot better. And it won't just be change for us and the people around us in this moment, but it will be change collectively for everyone that looks like us, for everyone that identifies with us, communicates with us, connects with us, for the people that come after us. I would love for our children and our children's children to be able to sit down on a Wednesday night and have such powerful conversations like this and not feel like they are restricted or in a bubble, or they can't say things that they really are feeling because I can't talk to my elder this way. I cannot talk to auntie this way. She's not going to like this. Uncle is not going to hear what I have to say. I would really love for us to come to a point as a people, as a community, where everything we're doing is just solely rooted in love, solely rooted in grace, solely rooted in I'm here for you. You are me, I am you, and we're going to get through this together. And that is exactly how we're going to make it forward.
Absolutely. Before we move on to the next person, I will say every episode, whether it makes it onto the recording or if it's beforehand, I say I don't have any set questions. But please don't ever think that I don't meditate on what I'm going to ask and how I ask it, because that's just as important to guide this conversation or any of the conversations, because I could have asked some wild things and we could have had some wild conversations. And that's not the intent or the impact we're trying to make. I could have asked questions of infighting between generations. We don't need to go there. We already know that there has been that situation. I'd rather go straight to how we work together, how we approach that, where do we need to pick up where we left off, keep that work going. So speaking of which, who would like to jump in? Go ahead, Renee.
So, everybody shared some really, really powerful things. And one of the things that I think I'm hearing is we have to be careful about not becoming the oppressor, not taking on the character traits of those things that we fight against. And, I'm thinking, I'm like, damn, I'm an elder. I didn't know I was an elder, but I'm an elder. So
step into it.
So with that being said, and I hear y'all with the meet people where they are, but I don't know. I've always flowed with people, and it's just, I approach everybody's just, we can talk. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe this is not the group to pose that question, because everybody was just flowing really, really well here. Yes. It was a very good connection. But there's always something to learn. You're never too old to learn. When you stop learning, you need to be going and look at Jesus or something, because you're never too old to learn. But the thing that our people must do that we don't do is share the wisdom. Knowledge is power. And just from connecting people with people, from being you need some help with something, you trying to write something, I do policy. I'm a walking encyclopedia of a mishmash of a lot of stuff. Some stuff is good, some is relevant, some is just some trivia. But in many instances, it can be helpful to someone. Too many times, and I've learned this, people hold power, they hold the knowledge, and they don't want to share the knowledge because they scared somebody gonna come up better than them. Who cares? I need people to come up better than me, because who wants to be around the same? Everything's the same. You should surround yourself with greatness. And that doesn't mean I'm the greatest person in the room, but I'm gonna sure go find me some great friends. So I'm really glad that I had an opportunity to meet you guys. I think the you younger ladies and gentlemen, y'all, this gives me some hope. This gives me hope, because they dog us. They paint us so negatively in the media, even with, and I'll say it again, even with our greatness, and listening to you all and just going like, wow, okay, you know what, we might really, something good may happen. It's going to take about 50 more years, because we done got set back. I'm here to tell you, we done got set back a good 50 years. But with young people and young minds, it is hope. So I reached out to Atira. I done looked all y'all up and tried to find you on Facebook. Muhammad, I know who you are. You praying for me all the time, because I be cutting up. But I am seriously, I am available. I've sent out some Facebook friends requests. I don't have random friends. I know 90% of the people that I'm Facebook friends with, I know them. And it's about intentionally surrounding myself with people who are smarter than me, who are hungry, who have a quest and a love. So I don't know about this folks not being able to talk to nobody or none of that. We can agree, we can disagree. It's about intellectual discord, but I am here, and I really hope that y'all will accept my friend's request. And I do put up a little bit on Facebook, and I do get a little radical too, but so I'm just gonna tell you, see, Mr. Muhammad, he know. Sammy know too, but I'm just saying, I am on this earth to help. And I have a Rolodex, and that I've had to learn is one of the most powerful things one can have, is a Rolodex. Not saying that you know somebody, but that somebody knows you, and they take your phone call, and that they will write that recommendation, or that they will look at that resume and actually look at it with the intent of, what can I do with this woman? What can I do with this man? That's the power we must build, in addition to buying Black and supporting one another, and putting ourselves in places of power so that we can continue to build. So I'm gonna dial it back. And I thank you, Sammy. I guess we should thank Crystal for recommending.
Oh yeah, the alley oop.
It's
Yes,
really, really
yes,
good.
yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, a hard act to follow, Kearah-Armonie. You gotta bring up the rear act.
No, I mean,
I'm
everyone,
so sorry.
no worries, no worries. Everyone is so amazing and just summed up exactly how I feel. I think one good, it's gonna get a little meta, but this itself is a good way to create that discourse among generations, especially creating space for it, because I'm probably not gonna talk to any old man on the street. Um, and also I want to say one thing. I think it's also important to like just ask questions. So when we say how do we create this discourse, this camaraderie, it doesn't have to be totally goal oriented. It could just be a conversation. It doesn't have to be like, well, grandma, how do I fight the power? Like, how do I change the world? It could just be like, what were you doing when you were 28 years old, And I remember watching the Wu-Tang Clan documentary like about a year or so ago, and they talked about a young man who was killed by the police in 1989, I think, in Staten Island, in the same area where Eric Gardner was killed 25 years later. And I had no idea about that case. I had no idea that that same community went through the same pain. And the Wu-Tang, like they're around my parents' age group, in their 40s and 50s now. So when you realize that the generation before you went through it and before that went through it, and more generations before that, it gives a different perspective to the fight. And it also humbles you, makes you realize that we're not all alone in this, that this is not a 2020 thing. It's not a 2012 thing. It's not a 2009 thing. And it's just important to have those conversations. Like, where were you when that happened? What were you doing when you went to undergrad and all of that? So, yeah.
Brilliant. This was such a powerful conversation. One of my terms of endearment for people who share gems is pastors. This was a pack of pastors today. Thank you everyone for sharing such beautiful notes on how we can work together, where you're coming from, your approach. I appreciate every last one of you for saying yes. I scour the internet and bother people, and I appreciate everyone who's like, I'll read that message. Okay, Sammy, let's do it. Let's hop on that call. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us for the season 2 premiere of the Ashe Academy's Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. I am Sammy Ashe, back again, the executive director of the Ashe Academy. And everyone, take care, be well, be safe.